The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Now, if you'd like to send us an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And we're coming to you tonight on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, and on Channel 32 on Simul TV, which is the X-Zone TV channel. Great show lined up for you over the next 3 hours, X-Zone Nation. However, my first guest tonight is going to be talking about something that I have never heard before. We're going to be talking about Nomoli star gods, ancient alien stone figurines, and artifacts. Joining me all the way from Conestoga, Pennsylvania, is our guest this hour, Bennett Vonderheide. And Bennett, welcome to the X Zone.
Good evening, Rob, and welcome to the X Zone.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, my friend.
My name is Ben. I'm from Conestoga, Pennsylvania, which is in Lancaster. And at this point in time, I have the collection of Nomoli star god stones. And I've appeared on the Ancient Alien television show and other podcasts. Very excited and want to thank you for having the Nomoli on.
My pleasure. Tell us, how did you become aware of the Nomoli and what started you on your quest?
Well, I don't know that it was a quest. And I often ask myself and others, did I find the Nomoli or did the Nomoli find me?
Good question.
It was decades ago, and I was approached by a man who became a friend of mine who was an agent for the intelligence community of the United States and was also a diamond smuggler, very similar to the character Leonardo DiCaprio in the movie Blood Diamonds, in the same area. I mean, he was more realistic. He didn't go in there with guns and blast away the natives. He went in and won them over with grace and charisma, because that's what will get you in and out alive. So he had contacted me to recruit me. I was not interested in that work for a variety of personal reasons. I didn't take him up on that, but we became friends, and he introduced me to the Nomoli. At one point in time, he told me that the chiefs on one of his visits, one of his treks, he told me that around a fire or one of the villages, they had decided that I was a brother of theirs in spirit, and that began the journey. But I have to say, I loved them. I just really attracted to them, and I collected many of them, but I had no idea really what they were. And it took many years till I went out, reached out to see what they were, and found out that very few people, if anyone, had ever heard of them. As you said, I would anticipate that 99% of your listeners and viewers have never heard of the Nomoli, even in today's world where such things are very popular from around the globe. These have been highly and successfully suppressed for 100 years.
Wow. In the information you sent us, you said the Nomoli star gods and figurines are said to be gods who rained down from the heavens and lived among the people of West Africa at the dawn of time. What do we know about the Nomoli?
Well, West Africa is not a written tradition; it's an oral tradition. So we have information that would have come from the deepest parts of the jungle. And what the tradition is that, again, they lived amongst the stars, and when they misbehaved, they were turned to beings of stone, men of stone. They rained down upon the earth and lived with the humans. They were much larger than humans. I have some stones which depict the characteristics which are generally assigned to Nomoli. And they lived amongst the people in the earliest of times and blessed them with blessings which gods would, including the natives contend, these figurines.
In your opinion, and this just crossed my mind as you were talking about the Nomoli, is there a connection or a possible connection between the Nomoli and the Nephilim in the Bible?
Well, I'm always very careful not to state anything I don't know for sure.
Okay.
And so I would say there are those who contend that there are similarities, but on the other hand, there certainly are major differences.
How about the heads on Easter Island? Any connection there?
Well, yes. In fact, I have a stone here in front of me. Thor Heyerdahl, I'm sure you are familiar with Thor Heyerdahl, and the Kontiki. If your viewers are not familiar with it, the Kontiki, I know when we were young, they taught it in school.
Yeah, that's right.
There was a movie, actually, the first black and white one, and I think they might have done a colored version, a docudrama later. But Thor Heyerdahl did other exploration. He led the first expedition to Easter Island. And he commented thereafter that they had found stones in the caves. Very few people are also familiar with this. Most people are familiar with the giant statues of Easter Island.
Yes.
When they first arrived, the early adventurers and explorers, they found some very small figurines in caves, hidden. There weren't a lot of them, and they were probably all plundered. So I've never seen an example of them myself. But Thor Heyerdahl mentioned that the closest he had ever seen to those figurines were the Nomoli from West Africa. And specifically, he identified the holes that they have in their heads, which have a specific purpose, according to the tribal police, and that these holes were also found in these small figurines in the Easter Island. The holes generally are directly on top of the head. They'll go in a short distance and terminate. And they were said to be where they would put the sacred liquid, the libation, if you will, that would somehow raise the consciousness. Now, maybe something that everyone also ingested that was that would raise the consciousness of the tribe during these ceremonies.
Now, I've never seen a statue or a graphic of the Nomoli. What do they look like? Do they look like Homo sapiens? Do they have the elongated skulls? Do they?
Well, let me get. I'm going to be off camera just a second here. Let me lean over here. And,
all right. Well, while you're doing that, I'm just going to let our listeners know again who you are.
Yes.
Bennett Vonderheide is our guest this hour, X-Zone Nation, and his website is ancientalienstones.com. That's ancientalienstones.com. And we're talking this hour about the Nomoli star gods, ancient alien stone figurines and artifacts. All right, he's back.
Okay, here's a traditional Nomoli. You'll see that when you see the traditional ones, the legs are always pretty squatty. And this is a male figure, obviously. Very few of them have that penis. It's a male-oriented one. It would be used for male. Can you just my aunt, who passed away several years ago, gave me, it's about this tall, made of brass, a figurine that looks almost identical to that. I'm going to find it and send a picture of it to you. Yes, their eyes are often large like that. Their nostrils are flared.
Yeah.
Their eyes were said to be so powerful that you could not look at them for any period of time. Their voices were so loud they would speak in one village and be heard in the next village. That was through telecommunication of some sort.
Fascinating. So
that's a traditional Nomoli. And yes, in fact, in the early 1900s, 1920, I believe it was, there was an imperialism show in England, where they had representatives from many countries that they were colonized, many nations of Africa, and the Sierra Leone booth handed out very small little Nomoli figurines, reproductions, of course. The originals are stone, and then there are also some little gold figurines which are made replica or similar in design. But the interesting thing about the Nomoli is they cross over from the figure you just saw, which is a traditional Nomoli god, all the way over to the other side of the spectrum, which are pure humanistic forms. And they would be used for different purposes. The pure humanistic form, as an example, one would be the Divine Mother with child. So that's a mother holding and feeding a child. And that would be used to both for ceremonies for mothers who were pregnant and for young children to protect them during the pregnancy. But also they would set that at a shrine in the center of the village. as a remembrance to the village of how important it was to protect and to honor mothers and children. So all the way across, and in the middle of the road, you'd have a Nomoli figurine such as this one, which connected us to Dogon, which would have the Nomoli figurine with crocodiles. Wow. Which were said to, of course, represent the Dogon gods. And you'll have some which are somewhat Nomoli, but then have humanistic figures. There are some called the Mahaniati, which are chief's stones and would have been specifically for a chief, a leader of a chiefdom. And they would have theoretically be instilled with the powers of the Nomoli, whichever you would want these attributes that you would want your chief to have, because as with most cultures throughout the world in antiquity, they believed that the closer their chief was connected to God, the more they would prosper, the more they would victorious.
How long have you been involved with the Nomoli now?
Decades.
Really?
Decades. And it was only maybe 6-7 years ago that I finally, maybe a little longer, did an outreach. Again, found that there was little known about it, but then I was able to connect with Professor Kwakura Forianza from Howard University, a genius, real good man who was raised in Ghana, had been the art professor at Howard for 37 years. And he was an expert on the stones and arranged for us to exhibit them at the African Art Museum of Maryland, where, as far as I understand, it's the largest collection of Nomoli which has ever been exhibited in the United States.
All right, stand by. Ben, you and I have to take our first break. Explanation, our guest this hour is BENNETT VONDERHEIDE, and I hope I'm pronouncing your family name right.
That's exactly right.
All right. He's in Conestoga, Pennsylvania. His website is ancientalienstones.com. We're talking about the Nomolis here on the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada.
Question: what is the name of the unique blend of coffee you get that has been formulated by a neurologist, a neurobiologist, and a pharmaceutical chemist? Answer: you get Beautiful Mind Coffee, a unique coffee blend that tastes great and has herbal ingredients that your brain will love, and it is not just coffee, it's brainalicious. Dr. Rathbone, Dr. Jang, and Dr. Winslow, the scientific team that created Beautiful Mind Coffee, decided to collaborate on a coffee focusing on brain health. As for those herbal ingredients found in Beautiful Mind Coffee, Dr. Rathbone, Dr. Jang, and Dr. Winslow, utilizing their combined extensive scientific research background, worked with many natural and herbal products until the exact formulation that is found in Beautiful Mind Coffee was created. With a unique scientific formula not found in any other coffee being sold or served, Beautiful Mind Coffee is the only coffee blend that contains 3 herbal ingredients found to aid in boosting your daily mental clarity and focus. Every cup of Beautiful Mind Coffee contains scientifically formulated amounts of maca root powder, green tea extract, and American ginseng, all supporting good brain health. Taking care of your brain's health now can help delay or prevent the onset of cognitive dysfunction, including dementia, Alzheimer's, and more general memory loss as you get older, just by enjoying the delicious flavor of our roasted coffee and herbal ingredients found exclusively in Beautiful Mind Coffee. Did you know that cognitive dysfunction also refers to deficits in attention, verbal and non-verbal learning, short-term and working memory, visual and auditory processing, problem-solving, processing speed, and motor functioning? For more on Beautiful Mind Coffee, the 3 scientists who formulated Beautiful Mind Coffee, and more details on the 3 unique herbal ingredients in Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca. Beautiful Mind Coffee is now available online at amazon.ca and amazon.com. To order Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca today.
We're talking about Nomolis this hour here on the X Zone with our guest, Bennett Vonderheide, and his website is ancientalienstones.com. After all the years that you've been investigating, studying, researching the Nomolis, what have we learned, and how have they affected or influenced life today?
Well, I do want to mention I picked up the stone that's related to Easter Island. So before we go too far, remind me, I'll show you that one.
Sure.
The Nomoli, what I have learned is what I've tried to do, and what I've made a strong effort to do is remain open-minded. And so what I've learned most is by putting them into people's hands. And so we know, I mean, historically, we know that they were first discovered in the 1400s by Portuguese sailors, as far as those outside of the country of Africa. They were written about in the 1850s, first in America. Then they were written about again up in 1917s, interesting writings. By then, Walter Edwin mentioned that they had already theoretically been knocked off, if you will, being fabricated in Asia, in China and Asia, and brought over to Africa and sold as authentic. We know that they were used by the tribes for a variety of different reasons. They've been collected by royalty in England. I understand they are in the palaces. They have some Nomoli. They have been in museums. The Bronx Museum has a Nomoli. And so we know that they were used throughout antiquity by the natives. We know that they were suppressed for, without going into too much detail, for political, religious, medical, social reasons that completely obliterated them from the awareness of people throughout the world. And that now in fact, the only time they've been on television ever was in 1991 on Unexplained Mysteries, up until we got onto the Ancient Aliens television show back a couple of years ago. And that was the reawakening, if you will. And your show is part of this reawakening, to bring them back into the fold and allow them to bless people again.
Do you have any idea where they originally came from and why they came to Earth?
The Nomoli, I do not know. Well, yes, we do know that the Nomoli, my son and I were doing research, and we identified a potential connection to the Dogon tribe of Mali. And some of your listeners may be familiar with the Mali Empire at one time. But the Dogon tribe have a god that came down in the ship, was surrounded by clouds and storm, and taught them the information that they came from Sirius. If your listeners are familiar, I'm sure you're familiar with the Dogon, that they had identified the star, even the ghost, the secondary star to the twin star, not twin, but the smaller star of Sirius, and they said we came from the third planet off of that star, second or third planet. So theoretically, we know that they came from Sirius. The reason why we connected to the Nomoli is because they are the Nomos of Mali, the gods of Mali. So it's very possible, likely, that over a period of time, they went from the Nomos of Mali to Nomoli. We know that they use the tribal beliefs or tribal use, still to this day, some places deep in the jungle. The medicine men, the medicine women, the chiefs, the Zoe, which is the oldest secret women's society still functioning in the world. The Zoe High Priestess was the Sunday Society. The Zoe is the name of the High Priestess. That they used them also for healing, for blessings, for strength, for prosperity, for childbirth. And now we know that for the last 5 years, we have been using them in America. And according to the shamans, the healers, the remote readers, the psychics, the astral projection people that have contact with them, they still retain the power that they originally had. The natives would say no man ever carved an Nomoli. They were given to them by the gods.
All right. So what is the present day use of the figurines, and how do they fit into today's society? Or is it just the investigation of yet another ancient civilization that came from the stars that has come to Earth and disappeared through time?
Well, there's a couple different levels of that. The first, simplest level is that they are again being used by healers, by shamans in America now, and more we're getting them into the hands of shamans. I've sold a number of pieces. I have a couple more for sale right now, and we're tracking that. We're going to we're going into the media through like the documentary TV series, inevitably a full feature film on the Nomoli and the Blue Sky Stone. And so we know that they are currently being used again by those who are in those various modalities with great success. And we want to track that. It's a beautiful thing in today's world because we have equipment where we can track scientifically and where we can study the results on individual patients of the use of the Nomoli. There's a big picture too, that over the years, things of these sort of spiritual artifacts and powerful items of Africa have been demonized to a large extent. And as a result of that, there are millions and millions of descendants of those areas who have no respect and no knowledge and no awareness of the spiritual practices of their ancestors, and maybe even think that they were less than those of others, which is interesting if you compare it to, let's say, the Native Americans.
Sure.
The ancients of any other place in the world, that now there's a great deal of respect. If you find an artifact from an ancient tribe, an American tribe, there's many people who would understand that that is a valuable relic. But still in Africa, there's some of this demonization. So by getting them out and putting them out in front of people and having them used, we can confront that and erase that nonsense that has been brought about by others, mostly fanatics from other religions, not the normal Christian or Muslim, but those who are fanatic and want to destroy other people's beliefs and other people's artifacts.
You know, other civilizations that seem to parallel the Nomoli have left, for example, the Aztec temples. Then you've got the Egyptian pyramids. What have the Nomoli left beside the figurines?
Well, and that's interesting. And one of the good things about the Nomoli is you can get them and activate them because they're dug up. They're found in the jungle of Africa. They're dug up randomly, often just one piece. When they find them, they often find diamonds because the natives believe that the diamonds were parts of the stars that fell with the Nomoli gods. So we know that they come out of places where you can acquire them because they're not part of a temple. They're not part of a burial site. You are not permitted, and rightfully so, to steal, take things from these places, and they would be restricted. These are found randomly throughout the jungle, and so we can have access to them. And what was the rest of your question?
No, I was asking because it seems that the Nomoli parallel other ancient civilizations that have come and gone, except there are those like the Egyptians who left us the pyramids. You have the Aztecs and the Incas who have left us artifacts.
Oh, yes.
You know,
the answer to that question is that there is a direct lineage genealogically to the Dogon with the ancient Egyptians. Now, the common belief is that the Egyptians were first and the Dogon came after that. That's not what the people of the jungle believe. They believe that long before the pyramids in Egypt, that these civilizations in West Africa were far advanced and built other pyramids. And that's where they had initially built pyramids. And they sent emissaries to Egypt to build and to teach them how to build the pyramids. And that the jungle eventually absorbed those civilizations back into it, and they've disappeared. Now, some people have handed stones to stone readers feel that they're 13,000 years old. I don't know what the significance of that 13,000 years, but they feel that's part of the Atlantean culture. So there is a potential and a belief that long before these other civilizations were prosperous, there was an ancient civilization in West Africa which was far advanced, again, maybe part of the Atlantean culture, which some people put as off West Africa, and that there could be remnants of such in the jungle.
But Ben, looking at the Egyptian history, very well documented. There's no mention of Nomalis.
No.
So how can we say that they were in Egypt when one of the most documented civilizations on this planet has no mention of them?
Yeah, I would not be able to answer that. I'm only saying what the beliefs are in the West African tribal historical beliefs. So I have no evidence of that.
How about the archaeologists and the other members of academia? What do they say? What is their take on the Nomali?
I know of no exhaustive studies in that relation, in relative to that. I do know that the only thing I know is that there was a stone found back in 1991 that had a ball bearing in it, and it was sent off. Klaus Donner was involved with that, who's one of the foremost experts in out of time objects out of time, and they sent that in for experimentation. The chromium ball was taken out of the belly of the stone, which was interesting because there was no hole where it had been put in. There was no, place where they excavated the stone and put it and filled it back in. They took that ball out of there, and that was chromium. That was one of the few Nomoli that was ever dug, and the strata was retained with it, and that was dated to 17,000 years old. So
how was it dated? Was it carbon dated?
It was carbon dated with the strata in which it was found.
All right, stand by. We've got to take our break at the bottom of the hour. X-Zone Nation, our guest this hour is Bennett Vonderheide. His website is... Got your pencils ready? All right. Don't check it out now. Wait until after the show, guys. AncientAlienStones.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone. We'll be back after this break. Don't go away.
So I was watching the X-Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
The topic of the hour is the Nomali star gods. Bennett Vonderheide. Vonderheide is our special guest this hour. www.ancientalienstones.com. In the case of other artifacts that have been found and that have been put in museums and so on, for example, the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull of doom, the country of Belize wants it back, or I don't know if they got it back finally. Have any of the governments in Africa want these statues back that you have?
No.
What is their take on the Nomalis and the history that you have?
Well, they want to disassociate in a very real sense. And it was interesting. Kwaku was one of the exceptions, Professor Foyanza. And when we began working together 6 years ago, when he was more active, he's not well. I don't know if he's still with us, but he wanted me to contact other professors at various colleges, universities around the country. And I found something surprising, and it was similar to what happens in West Africa. There's a very strong, first of all, these areas are strongly Muslim. And the Muslims generally do not do not agree with things that are a certain age. They do not agree and do not like artifacts, as we've seen when they destroy museums. In some places they've taken over. But there's a much stronger desire to not be seen as uncivilized. So they do not promote, nor from my experience are they interested in being associated with the tribal beliefs, with the ancient artifacts that relate to the Nomoli. They don't want their tribal, they don't want the members of their country to either, and I can understand this, they want people to buy into modern medicine. They want them to take the vaccines. They want them to go to the doctors, which is all, I'm not saying it's all bad, it's a lot of good in there, but the way they do that is to eliminate the traditional beliefs and push them down. So for religious, for social reasons, to appear more modern and not uncivilized, there's a very limited, if any, interest. And again, even the African studies professors at universities in America who I contacted did not have any interest, which was astounding to me, that they had no interest in these artifacts or in being involved in the rediscovering and helping them to rise and reconnecting them to the descendants. There's a real coldness towards that, from my experience.
Any idea why? I mean, besides the possible religious and political sides,
Well,
here you've got, academia who's supposed to be at the helm of discovery, history, and getting to the truth. So why would they not want to pursue the depth of a greater investigation and historical quest?
It astounds me that here I am sitting in Conestoga, and I'm the world's foremost expert and promoter of the Nomoli. So I can't answer that except, again, to revert to the fact that they have a strong desire to be modern and to, in a very real sense, separate themselves. And it could be because there's religions and their spiritual practices have been demonized by so many throughout the world that they have felt it's the easier way to go. But then again, I would say if you're not connected, if you're not at an early age or anywhere, if you're not introduced and there's no value associated, I guess that's a pattern that you just develop. But what do you mean?
What do you mean by demonized?
Well, there are a lot of people who believe that the African spiritual practices are demonic, and I mean, when I've shown the stones to people over the years, I've had people say, "Isn't that the stone that was on the beginning of the Exorcist movie?" Like, I don't remember the stone at the beginning of the movie, but certainly, and when I've presented at museums and other places, it's fairly common for people to say, "Have you ever had a negative experience?" And aren't these created for demonic purposes? And I have to answer people and say, you gotta use some common sense. You've got millions of people, like Sierra Leone has 8 million people. 7 million of them living in the jungles. Many times they're ravaged by disease, by starvation, by lack of drinking water, by animals that kill them. All these things, by tribal wars. The fact that people think that they would sit there and create these things to harm others, common sense says they do everything they can to make their life a better plight, make their life a little better, and to help people in their tribes that they see suffering. And that's what they were created for, and that's everything I've ever seen. I've had them in places where MUFON shows and things along those lines, where people come and they'll get within 10 feet of them and break down, and then come back and thank me for bringing the stones, or where they'll put them in their hands. I've seen people have healings right there in front of you and just change. And so everything I've seen has been positive, but I don't think I think that the certainly, again, the extreme and radical religious individuals, who often are the ones who go into the jungle. I mean, the fundamental Christians, the fundamental Muslims, trying to do good work and help mankind out, but their belief systems are radically different than the natives.
If the people look at the figurines of the Nomoli as negative, why wouldn't they look at other religious artifacts and refer to them as negative or being demonized?
That's a curious question, and I don't have the answer to that. And I would say that they do. I mean, certainly, again, there are many Christians throughout the world who would demonize anything that's Muslim. There are many fundamental Christians and fundamental Muslims that would demonize anything to do with Native Americans. There are, so throughout the history of mankind, one of the standards of religion is that you, if you are not careful, automatically use it to judge other people as less than and to separate yourself, which from my experience is the exact opposite of what God wants you to do.
Sure.
If you're a religious human being.
So tell me, why do you do what you do? What is your mission?
Well, I see that for whatever reason, these have come into my life. When I looked around and found that no one else that I could find had any awareness and knowledge of them, I'd already by then picked them up and meditated with them myself and used them in healings. I'd helped other people, introduced other people, and seen dramatic results. Mm-hmm. It became apparent to me that these are a powerful force, an angelic force that has been suppressed and, in my opinion, wants to come back and bless mankind. So it's a double-edged sword, if you will. It's so cool. You think, wow, I found this great thing. Nobody else knows about it. I got these artifacts. But then at the same time, you're like, nobody else knows about it. I've got to do something about that.
Your moniker is Daddy Justice, and in 2020, you produced a Film Police 101 35-episode series on how to film cops and not get shot. How did you segue from, you know, being a guy who likes to taunt and tantalize the police to doing what you're doing?
Well, I don't like to taunt and terrorize the police. That was a byproduct. Daddy Justice is just that. I started 21 years ago on March 12th when I was falsely accused by the mother of my son, and I became a victim of the anti-male forces in America, headed up by the Violence Against Women's Act and all these non-government organizations. Have billions of dollars put into demonizing men anytime a woman accuses them, and which has been used for decades to take children and eliminate their fathers. So after I won my case, which took years, and I faced many years in jail, I've been accused of more crimes than anybody will ever have on your show, I assure you. After I was victorious, and the mother of my son, unfortunately, was the only woman ever convicted of perjury in a custody case in America. And I turned that around. Then other people began to come and ask me to help them out when they were in an impossible situation. So what I did was I used covert, overt, and psych ops. I do investigations, I investigate, and I turn the tables on those that are falsely accusing. Men and women sometimes also get falsely accused, usually by the government agencies, the Children's Protective Services takes their children. So in doing that, the way that I went about it was to go directly after the judges, the lawyers, the cops, primarily, the counselors. And instead of just going after the system, I would target them individually and force them as best I can by investigating them and then doing interviews or doing what they call ambush interviews, track them down, put the camera on them, and I would then reveal what they were doing on the internet. That would help them to do the right thing. In the process of that, they sicked their dogs on me, as we'd say, and that was sheriff's deputies and police officers from wherever I went. I mean, again, I know 31 instances is just 31 instances of the different times when I was confronted by police in the ongoing of my work. Because once you go up against the government, it's not only the DOJ and the FBI that target people. It occurs at all different levels, and it's easier to get away with down at the bottom. So the DA and the judges, they put a target on your back. Once that target's on your back, the police officers know that they can charge you with anything and you're going to be found guilty. So again, I've been prosecuted by the Attorney General's office, by the district attorney, by police officers. And fortunately, I have only been convicted of a couple minor harassment and disorderly conducts they get me for, but I beat the charges, which have put me in jail for years. So how did I transition? I finally had to step back. I just got too old and tired, I think, to be confronting cops all the time. But I also have this inability to back down when I'm right. Sure. And when I'm helping out someone who's just a citizen, who's just an average dad, who's just, you know, getting railroaded, and your children are going to lose their father. Because this has ruined more men in America than anything else. You know, no, Al-Qaeda has not destroyed nearly as many men as the divorce industry and the false accusation industry. And sadly, well, rightfully, we stand with the women that are truly victimized. Sadly, there are just uncountable people who will take advantage of them for their own personal benefits, to take the house, to take the kids, to take the assets, to imprison the father of their children out of spite, anger, or mental illness or evil.
We've got to take our final break. Exonation. Our guest this hour is Bennett Vonderheide. His website is ancientalienstones.com. I'm Rob McConnell. We'll be back as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Question: what is the name of the unique blend of coffee you get that has been formulated by a neurologist, a neurobiologist, and a pharmaceutical chemist? Answer: you get Beautiful Mind Coffee, a unique coffee blend that tastes great and has herbal ingredients that your brain will love, and it is not just coffee, it's brainalicious. Dr. Rathbone, Dr. Jang, and Dr. Winslow, the scientific team that created Beautiful Mind Coffee, decided to collaborate on a coffee focusing on brain health. As for those herbal ingredients found in Beautiful Mind Coffee, Dr. Rathbone, Dr. Jang, and Dr. Winslow, utilizing their combined extensive scientific research background, worked with many natural and herbal products until the exact formulation that is found in Beautiful Mind Coffee was created. With a unique scientific formula not found in any other coffee being sold or served, Beautiful Mind Coffee is the only coffee blend that contains 3 herbal ingredients found to aid in boosting your daily mental clarity and focus. Every cup of Beautiful Mind Coffee contains scientifically formulated amounts of maca root powder, green tea extract, and American ginseng, all supporting good brain health. Taking care of your brain's health now can help delay or prevent the onset of cognitive dysfunction, including dementia, Alzheimer's, and more general memory loss as you get older, just by enjoying the delicious flavor of our roasted coffee and herbal ingredients found exclusively in Beautiful Mind Coffee. Did you know that cognitive dysfunction also refers to deficits in attention, verbal and non-verbal learning, short-term and working memory, visual and auditory processing, problem-solving, processing speed, and motor functioning? For more on Beautiful Mind Coffee, the 3 scientists who formulated Beautiful Mind Coffee, and more details on the 3 unique herbal ingredients in Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca. Beautiful Mind Coffee is now available online at amazon.ca and amazon.com. To order Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca today.
And we're back, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us tonight here on the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Our guest this hour is Bennett Vonderheide. I did it again, Vonderheide.
It's been done worse.
Holy cow. And we're talking about Nomoli Figurines of the Nomoli star gods. You were mentioning earlier that people have reported healings and they felt a power or a presence when in front of these artifacts. Can you share some of the stories with us?
Yes, you mentioned the crystal skulls. One of the people that was on the crystal skull tour was Shaman Jeff Wheeler from Bradenton, Florida, and he's been using the stones now for years. I initially hooked him up with one years ago, and he had set it at his altar next to his crystal skulls. He has some of the most valuable ones you could have. And he said that the stone told him that it wanted them to use it in healing, and then he began using it in his healings. And he's on the website with a video of that. I have other individuals, people who just use them for their personal use and dramatically turn their lives around. For one woman in particular, I can think of a friend who was very ill, in and out of the hospital all the time. Over a period of time, using the Nomoli and other things. I mean, it's not, we have to show up and do the work. But now she does healing retreats and ended up with a chalet at Mount Shasta, where she's invited us to come out and bring the Nomoli for the first time to be at Mount Shasta, because she got a message that they're supposed to be there. There's a remote reader who works in, again, remote reading, who has used them, and she took them to a class that a gentleman had who does remote reading for the FBI, and they all used them. We put them in the middle of a meditation of 30 people and sat around, and it was just amazing. We have some video of that on the website. So there are a variety of people who have used them, and then we have another ex-Navy SEAL who's a healer out in Marina Del Rey, who's been using one for years also, and their results have been amazing.
Well, where do you get all these figurines and statues?
Well, again, they came from my friend who was a diamond smuggler and his contacts deep in the jungle of West Africa.
I understand that. So how many of these do you have access to? I
have dozens of them.
Wow.
An amazing collection.
And you sell them?
I've sold a couple of them. I've sold a few of them, and I'm going to sell a couple more. We want to keep quite a few of them because we envision a television series, episodic, where we will use them each week and allow people of different modalities to use them in healings. Also to set up, two of the guys that I'm working with were at the Alien Con. I didn't get out there this time, but to set up at expos and shows and let people come in and touch the stones and use them for the healings. So we don't want to, I'm not going to sell all of them, but I've sold a couple, and I will sell, some more, a few more over the period of time. And some of those people will then be able to be folded back into the show.
Just out of sheer curiosity, how much would you sell one of these statues for? If one of our listeners wanted to contact you and say, listen, I'm interested.
We have them starting at 8,000 and up till in the 20s.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah,
8,000.
Oh, yes. If you look at Sotheby's back in the day when they did sell, which wasn't that long ago, they've sold for 6,000 to 80,000.
Unreal. Listen, we're running out of time fast. Quickly, what is your mission now? What's your final message for the X-Zone Nation?
Well, here's my final message, is that Rob has been chosen by the Nomoli to introduce you all to the Nomoli. So he's a special spatial character who has a connection that he didn't even know.
You're very kind, my friend. Bennett, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. Continued success. Keep spreading the word, my friend. And X-Zone Nation, if you'd like to get more information about our guest this hour, visit ancientalienstones.com. Take care and be safe, Bennett.
Thank you for having the Nomoli on.
Take care, buddy. All right, X-Zone Nation, that's it for this hour. I'll be back at the top of the hour as we once again continue with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario. Check us out online at www.xzoneradiotv.com. And all of our episodes of all the programming that we produce on the X-Zone Broadcast Network is available without charge. No fees, no membership at www.xzbn.net. And don't forget, we're exclusive to Simul TV, the X-Zone TV channel, Simul TV channel number 32. Thanks for joining me this hour. I'll be back.